Chapter 6: The Bear and Ms. Kaniasile. There was an old black kettle with 2 additional small pots on a grate, roasting over a low-lit fire. Wanyanyekevu opened the pots and found chicken and dumplings in one, and in the other 2 pots, there was sweet corn and green beans with potatoes slices. Seeing 2 spoons resting near the fire, he started stirring the pots. His mouth began to water as he quickly served himself a plate. Walking toward the campfire, he took a seat on the rock and paused, listening to the surrounding animals. He slowly ate while thinking of his day with Yael as his thoughts consumed him. Thoughts of his ancestors came rushing to his mind, thinking of the different stories told to him by his mother and father as he looked down at his meal. "Man, this is my mother's chicken and dumplings recipe!" he shouted, as he reached for his pen and wrote. "Then I cry." Many seeing, but not understanding. That's not a surprise for someone who specializes in deceiving. Having deceived many of us for the past 400 years. Question: if I grab my heart, is it always a heart attack? If I have brown skin, does that make me black? Better yet, a criminal? Crime run rampant through the streets everywhere. Another bill, another law, no one sees what's happening. Don't ignore this call. Research the problem. Tell me what you see now. Comprehend. Oppression and depression is where you should start. According to your eyes, you gave us sharecropping, the Civil Rights Bill. Gave us Jim Crow and redlining also. Let's not forget the ghetto. But tell me why. What happened to human rights? Gave a few good jobs, but the rest welfare. Why? Oh yes, slavery. Owing everything for so long, now expect us to all of a sudden have our own. Taken our names, culture, heritage, and pride. Then tell us that's just an excuse, when we recall your abuse. Do you wonder why you can't look into our eyes? Hearing so many still complaining, always asking why. Even today, there are many, they don't have hope. Hope to them is a fantasy. But not for me. Loneliness and fear are in their minds, however, I have opened my eyes. Now our women have better jobs, but they don't want us. For what do we have? Criminal records. So, we can't vote, can't work, unless it's hard labor. So, what do many do? Sell dope. Don't agree, just understand. Resentment has become hatred to some. I asked why? I sigh. Then I cry. Placing his pen and pad back in his backpack, he finished his meal and started gazing at the stars as he slowly drifted off to sleep. As the darkness covered him, he saw a beautiful transparent glass in front of him. It seemed as if it was floating in the air. Curious, he walked closer to it. Is this some kind of new glass? He asked himself. Dancing in the midst of it were the colors that resembled a rainbow's reflection. A giant bubble, maybe? He stretched out his arm to touch the glass but was interrupted by a filthy man who smelled of urine and musk. Attempting to hold his nose, the man swore and cursed at him. As he got into a fighting stance, he was awakened from his dream but still smelled the man's stench. Letzi was there, sitting in front of him. Good morning, Wanyanyekevu said, puzzled and rubbing his nose as he sat up, stretching, then rubbing his eyes. Letzi said to Wanyanyekevu, You're very passionate about your lineage. Sabaoth has seen your heart and would like to tell you more about who your ancestors are, because there is a reason you have such passion. Wanyanyekevu said, It's the way of many Wakatilians to serve Sabaoth, as warriors to learn and stay abreast of our fighting skills and know our heritage, for we are taught from our youth to recite our heritage. Centuries ago, we were lied to about who we were, which brought about great destruction amongst our people. I can go back 1,256 years. Letzi took a seat. You may begin, Wanyanyekevu said. Well, surprised that Letzi would even ask. Which side would you like me to start from? Letzi said. Both are equally important. On your mother's side, there were the indigenous people of the Americas, and their descendants came from proud and brave people of Africa. Letzi interrupted him. However, for this lesson, let's start with your father's side. Wanyanyekevu was shocked to hear what Mletsi had said and was curious because he could not go any further than slavery on his mother's side and wanted to know more. My father's side, I can give you 4 more generations than my mother's because of slavery, and I would like to learn more. I would have to start with John, born around 1787, who had James and James had TV had William, and William and his father arrived here during the mid-1800s. Proud Irish men who traveled here during what many called the Great Irish Invasion. There was a great famine in Ireland, and many fled to the US back then to escape poverty. 20 years later, the Civil War. The Irish were called the White Negroes even though they were mistreated. They still were treated better than the Wakatilians slaves of that time. You see, the slaves were considered livestock and not even human. I remember reading some of Noel Ignatiev's books, an author and historian during that time. He said they referred to the Irish as turned inside out, and the Negroes labeled smoked Irish. Anyway, as Wanyanyekevu continued, well, William was born in Ireland but eventually traveled south to Natchez, Mississippi. Like many others, desperate for work, his family became overseers for the slave owners. William had Albert. Albert bought up 99 acres of land, moved to a farm in the middle of Tallulah, away from the public's eye, and married Catherine Wilson of Comac, Louisiana, for their marriage was a white man's abomination. They had 12 children, 6 boys, David, Albert Jr., Doyle, Willie, Johnny, and Jimmy, and 6 girls, Thelma, Bertha, Geraldine, Catherine, Mary Sue, and Albertine. Albert's son Willie had Larry, who married Deke, and they had Justin. Justin had a Johnny during the race war of 2025. A Johnny had Alenia, Alenia had Namito, Namito had Kisama. Letzi squatted as Wanyanyekevu continued. Dohasan had Hakan, Hakan had Ease had Tablita, and Tablita had Liberte. Sabaoth changed his name to Wanyanyekevu, which is me. They teach us at a young age to never to forget our heritage. Letzi took a stick and started writing something in the dirt. Wanyanyekevu read it. Matthew chapter 1 verses 2 to 16. Wanyanyekevu was curious and asked, "Why did you write that?" Letzi asked, "Do you have your Torah?" Wanyanyekevu replied, "Sure." As he pulled it out, Letzi said, "What I'm about to tell you, let no man know, except your children." Taking the Torah from Wanyanyekevu, he opened up the Torah to Matthew 1 verses 2 to 16, and then gave it back to Wanyanyekevu. "Now read." Wanyanyekevu read, "Abraham had Isaac, Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob had Judah and his brothers. Judah had Perez and Zerah by Tamar, Perez had Hezron, and Hezron had Ram. Ram had Amminadab." Letzi just sat there as he read. "Josiah had Jeconiah and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon." Wanyanyekevu closed the Torah. "I know this by heart. Jeconiah had Shealtiel, and Shealtiel had Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel had Abiad." Letzi said, "I know you do, but pick it back up." Wanyanyekevu picked the Torah back up and, with his fingers, continued to read as his fingers ran across the words. "Eliezer had Mathan, and Mathan had Jacob. Jacob had Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, or Mshika as we call him, who is called Christ." Letzi said, "Okay, stop." Letzi closed the Torah and took out a scroll, and read it. "And James was the brother of Jesus. James married Anna, or some called her Anigius, the prophetess, and they had 2 sons, John and Jose Mar Ha-David." Letzi then looked at Wanyanyekevu. "The brother of Jesus is your ancestor." Wanyanyekevu sat there in awe, with his mouth open, as Letzi continued. "Therefore, you can read Luke 3 verses 23 to 38 as Jose Mar Ha-David, son of James, the brother of Jesus, being the sons of Joseph, the son of Heli, the son of Mathat. Letzi recited the entire lineage, but Wanyanyekevu just stood there and didn't say a word. "The son of Mahalaleel, the son of Cainan, the son of Enos, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God." Letzi then took another scroll out of his rope. "Now let's back up. I want you to read this." Wanyanyekevu read, Eri Lib had Abraham. Letzi interrupted him. No, right here. As he pointed to a section of the scroll, Wanyanyekevu read. During the relocation of the natives off the land during the Civil War, White Bear took and hid his son to a small town in Louisiana called Kamak and changed his name to William Wilson. William had Ben, Ben had Caesar, and Caesar had Jake. Knowing his family's richness, Jake married Lydia, and they had a daughter and named her Eagle Child or Behitha in the native tongue. But her government name was Catherine Wilson, and she married Albert Bolin, and Albert had Willie, Willie had Larry. Letzi continued to go through the list as Wanyanyekevu stood there like a statue in disbelief as he just realized his bloodline. He knew the name but couldn't trace her roots back because most of his lineage speaks about the men and not so much the women. Wanyanyekevu handed Letzi the scroll. Letzi smiled and gave the scroll back to Wanyanyekevu. This is yours to keep. Plus, you need to memorize it. Wanyanyekevu sat down and started memorizing his entire family tree. 3 hours had passed, and Wanyanyekevu was still engulfed in the scroll. Letzi called out to him. Wanyanyekevu! As Wanyanyekevu looked up, he saw Letzi waving for him to come to him. Wanyanyekevu walked up. Letzi said to him. Alsatia is your next stop, then to Sondheimer. Please walk with me. Wanyanyekevu began to speak, but Letzi interrupted him. Your things will be there when we get there. Nshika and I have found favor in you to show you the things you have seen, but there is much more you shall see, and do before your journey is over. Wanyanyekevu and Letzi walked for a few minutes and headed down Par Road 1423 to where he looked up and saw a sign that read, Hollybrook Crevasse. A small lake where Letzi took a seat on the ground near the lake. Tonight and tomorrow, you can rest and reflect on the things you have seen and heard thus far. Letzi handed him his pen and notepad. I figured you would need these, said Letzi as he disappeared. Wanyanyekevu sat there motionless as he thought about his people and all they had been through, how Sabaoth had not forsaken them because of their sins. He could hear his grandfather's voice telling him about the days of old, the days of great pain, and the suffering he and his ancestors had gone through in a time where Sabaoth was neither praised nor worshipped. He pictured that time, and a tear fell from his eyes as he grabbed his pen and began to write. This land? I woke up this morning, looked in the mirror, couldn't believe what I saw. So I looked again, I saw that I was black, anguished is what I felt, living in this land. Paying the bills while I'm worrying if I will have a job tomorrow. Brothers are dying left and right, what's so funny they're killing themselves? This is why I'm filled with sorrow in this land. You say it's not my color, no, not my skin. What is it then? The news says. A black man was selling drugs on the streets. Then they said, a lady was robbed last night by a man wearing jeans. What was the color of that man? They don't bother to tell, in this land. My sister gets raped, yes, my next of kin. Nothing is said because of the color of her skin. A brother does the same, before you know it, he's dead or in chains. All the silly games they play, only in this land. 400 years in this land. Oppressed, depressed, and stressed. What a mess. I've done all that I can to live in peace and harmony with the man. In this land? With tears rolling from his eyes, he slowly closed his notebook, looked up to heaven and said, Dear Sabaoth, whatever you have for me and my people, I'm willing and able to do. He stood there admiring the lake before he realized he didn't have his equipment or weapons. The sun was about to set, so he quickly gathered sticks and dry leaves to start a fire. Talking to himself, he said out loud, Guess I have to do it the old-fashioned way. He took 2 dry sticks and rubbed them together until he could get a spark to start a small fire. He was gently blowing to spread the fire to the rest of the dry leaves until he could slowly pile sticks and then old logs. Taking about 20 minutes, he finally got the fire where he wanted it. The darkness covered him as his stomach growled. Then he heard another growl. He was confused because it didn't come from him this time. Looking up, he saw something in the bushes ahead of him. He didn't sense danger, but he was perplexed at what was happening. Slowly moving towards him. Wanyanyekevu got into a fighting stance. Not understanding what was going on, he heard a voice in his head saying, "I don't want to fight or kill, I just want to eat." Wanyanyekevu relaxed and said aloud, "Show yourself!" A black bear came toward him. Wanyanyekevu said, "Are you talking to me?" The bear's mouth did not move, but he heard a voice. "How do you understand me?" Wanyanyekevu, perplexed again, took a seat and scratched his head. "I'm confused." The bear sat next to him, and was just as perplexed as Wanyanyekevu. Then, suddenly, he heard the plants and trees as if they spoke. "Nature truly has a voice," Wanyanyekevu said. "Now how am I supposed to eat what I can hear and speak to?" The bear looked at him and asked, "You're thinking about eating me?" Wanyanyekevu said, "No, silly, I wanted to go fishing because I'm starving." The bear looked at Wanyanyekevu and said, "They're not speaking to me." As it ran off into the lake, it returned with 2 large catfish in its mouth 30 minutes later. Dropping them on the ground, "I caught one for you." Wanyanyekevu stood there without a knife to clean and gut the fish as the bear ate. Looking at the bear, he said, "Can you bite off the head, and I will do the rest?" As he held the fish, the bear grabbed the fish, bit off the head, ate it, and said, "Thanks." Wanyanyekevu said to himself but aloud, raising his eyebrows, "This is new." Taking a while to clean and gut the fish without a knife, Wanyanyekevu did the best he could with a rock, before finally walking toward the lake and washing the fish off. Returning, he placed the fish on the fire and waited for the fish to get done. The black bear was long gone by the time Wanyanyekevu ate his fish. Feeling content, he laid back and watched the stars and talked to Sabaoth. "Everything that has life has a spirit, but only man has a soul, I get it." Listening to the sound of the trees and insects around him for the first time in his life, it all sounded like a choir. Wanyanyekevu talked to Sabaoth for a while longer before drifting off to sleep. A beam of light cracked through the leaves as the wind blew. The trees awoke Wanyanyekevu. He stood up and walked towards the lake, getting on all fours. He leaned over to grab as much water as possible with his hand and took a drink. Doing so, he saw in the distance something shining. Wanyanyekevu's curiosity got the best of him. As he walked towards the object, it was a sky craft. He looked around while picking it up and took a seat, amazed at the weight. Looks like it has been here a while and I thought it would be heavier. And I just love this marble-like finish," he said to himself. "It looks like it could go really fast. Amazing!" Jumping off, he started inspecting the vehicle again. After a few minutes tinkering with the sky craft, Wanyanyekevu headed south on Par Road 1423 until it turned into Homestead Road, but he was lost, for he had never been this far away from home before. In the distance, coming north, on Par Road 1423, was an old lady slowly walking towards him. Wanyanyekevu waited for her, hoping she would know the way. It seemed like it took forever as she slowly approached him. Wanyanyekevu was eager to get back on track. "Excuse me, I'm lost. I just got off Par Road 1423, and I see this road is Par Road 1423 as well. The sign here says Homestead Road, but that sign ahead says Par Road 2250, Transylvania Loop ahead. Please, can you help me? I am confused and lost." The old lady looked at Wanyanyekevu. "Son, I don't know what these people thought when they made these roads." She paused and shook her head as she continued. "The Par Road 1423 is the same as Homestead Road, and up ahead, it splits on the right Par Road 2250 and the left, Transylvania Loop. Behind there's Par Road 1423 and another Transylvania Loop." Taking a breath, she asked Wanyanyekevu, "What in the hell is a Par Road anyway?" Wanyanyekevu laughed and shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know. I thought you knew," the old lady said. "It's nonsense, that's what it is," the old lady said, laughing. "I'll help you get to where you are going, Wanyanyekevu, for I was told that I would never see death until I see the promise. That's got to be you. Do you see anyone else?" Wanyanyekevu said. "Are you an angel?" The old lady laughed. "An angel? Nah boy, my name is Anakataas, but my friends call me Candy. I'm just as human as you." Plus, I said, before I saw death, an angel can't die. Pay attention to words, young man. Kaniasile then started searching in her pockets and her bags. I can't find my specs. Must have left them. I won't need them anymore anyways. Let me look at ya. My eyes ain't what they used to be. Wanyanyekova was looking at the old lady. He felt her wisdom as it glowed all over her. She was 5 foot tall, weighing 135 pounds, with silky salt and pepper hair that touched the base of her back, with an arch in her back that made her slightly lean forward. After her inspection, she said, Okay, Lord, I'm ready to die. Wanyanyekova said. Die? With a smile on her face, she said. When you use an egg, do you keep the shell or throw it away? Wanyanyekova said. We reuse our eggshells in the garden. Kaniasile gave him a funny look. And Wanyanyekova smiled. Throw it away. Kaniasile laughed. This old body of mine has served its purpose. I'm ready. How about you? You ready to go? Gripping Wanyanyekova by the hands. Before you answer, I'm talking about going down the road. You got a lot to do. Now come on, let me show you your way. We're going straight down Par Road 2250 headed to Atherton until we get to Highway 65, where I'm going north, and you will go south. Let's get to know each other for this short time we'll be together. Kaniasile strolled, and Wanyanyekova had to get used to her pace. You know, when a woman is born, she is born with all the eggs she will ever have. Wanyanyekova said slowly in confusion. No. She continued. Think about it. If this is true, you existed when your mother was born. Therefore, you should always take care of your women because inside of them is our future. Wanyanyekova, shaking his head, said. Makes sense to me. She said. It does. Kaniasile took 2 more steps. You don't have to remember the truth. Wanyanyekova said. I'm confused? Kaniasile said. You must remember a lie to continue using it, and that one lie will multiply to stay alive. But the truth is true, and it can't change because it's the truth. Wanyanyekova said. Okay, I understand that. And I like that. Kaniasile continued. Know this, the great deceiver will put a wedge between men and women. Women shall have the power of men, and they will reduce men to the roles of a woman. She laughed. Minus being able to bear children, but the men will despise the women and use them as sex toys, and gang rape them for pleasure until a war between the two breaks out. Not the war that one is used to, but a battle of the sexes. Even though the two are supposed to be one. Until they know this, the two will never be complete. The great deceiver has sought to separate Sabaoth's people by destroying the alpha males and creating a new creature in both men and women. But this one will be a great blow for many, and they shall give in to succubus and incubus because of these lies. Sabaoth is able. Wanyanyekova was confused again. I don't understand. She said. Yes, I know many of the things you have seen since Mletsi left you were to show you things you didn't know or understand, but you will understand all later on your journey, and this too will become light to you as well. She started laughing again. You've been one confused little puppy. But all is well, my friend. All is well. Now come on here. They talked and laughed the entire time while they walked toward Atherton. Wanyanyekova loved the old lady's spirit, and she too was happy to have met him. The knowledge she gave him made him appreciate life and all the wonders it included within it. As they got closer to Atherton, Wanyanyekova saw Yael in the middle of the road. There goes Yael, Kaniasile said. Yes, I see. Wanyanyekova stopped. Hold on, you can see Yael. Kaniasile stopped as well. You're still a little slow, ain't ya, boy? No worries, you will become one of Sabaoth's greatest warriors. Laughing and continuing to joke around, she said. If you are of the Spirit, you see spiritual things because you are spiritual and see things of the Spirit, by the Spirit, and things for the Spirit. Besides that, did you know when I was younger, I whipped Yael's butt in a fight? Wanyanyekova said in surprise. You did? She laughed. Hell nah. They both continued to walk toward Yael, laughing. Wanyanyekova and Kaniasile stopped in front of Yael and hugged each other, and she said, I like you, you're humble, kind, and spirited, one Inyekova said. I like everything about you, you remind me of my grandmother. Besides, you're the first person I've met that can insult you and lift you up at the same time. She smiled and waved them goodbye and continued to walk. Yael bowed to Kaniasil as she faded into the distance. Yael turned to one Inyekovu. Go, without haste, to Transylvania, and there you will see your things, and a meal will be there to eat and go your way to Alsatia. One Inyekovu said sarcastically. I'm doing fine, and you? Seeing Yael was serious, he ran to Transylvania, where he saw an old abandoned church with a small fire, and some food and his belongings. While sitting on the steps of the old church, he hears a voice. Upon this rock I build this church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. He smiled. Let it be so, and I shall do my best not to dishonor you. A sense of joy came over one Inyekovu, and he felt a frigid chill over his body that quickly felt like fire, and he tried to say, thank you, but other words came out that he knew not of, a language unknown to him. He spoke this way for 10 minutes, and then tears rolled down his eyes. Just like Jeremiah, fire shut up in my bones. As he finished eating, he noticed the position of the sun. He knew he had about 3 hours before sunset, therefore, he walked a while, and once his food had been digested, he ran the rest of the way to Alsatia.